In the 1980s, as a nameless disease began to spread, the American entertainment industry witnessed a series of silent departure. A-list actors and musical maestros, once considered gods of perfection, suddenly vanished from the public eye or appeared with hauntingly altered features without explanation. According to production logs and medical records released decades later, there exists a list of legends who chose to battle the AIDS pandemic in absolute stillness. They kept that secret not to deceive but to protect the beautiful illusions their audiences so desperately believed in. From Rock Hudson to the cuckoo soul of Disney's music. Howard Ashman. What truly happened in their final years? Why did the passing of these individuals become the turning point that forever changed the world's perspective on an era? Let us look back at these rarely mentioned chapters of history where the truth is often more moving than the movies themselves. If you cherish these humane, hidden corners of history, please subscribe to our channel as we continue to tell the stories that were never revealed. Rock Hudson. When the God's mask cracked. In the 1950s and 60s, if one sought a flesh and blood definition of American masculinity, elegance and perfection, the first name uttered was undoubtedly Rock Hudson. With his towering height, chiseled features, and a smile that could melt any frame, Hudson was more than just an actor. He was a Hollywood national treasure. Yet according to documents surfaced decades later, behind that radiant aura lay a life constructed upon the strict codes of concealment. Rock Hudson's life was like a film meticulously scripted by the major studios. In that era, Hollywood moguls did not just own an artist's talent, they owned their personal image. To safeguard the dream lover persona for millions of women, a rigorous protection system was established around Hudson. Records reveal his agents orchestrated sham dates culminating in a 3-year marriage to Phyllis Gates in 1955. To the public eye, it was a storybook romance. However, later production files hint at a different purpose, a necessary shield to mask his true sexual orientation. Something considered a career death sentence in Hollywood at the time. Everything began to shift in the early 1980s. Hollywood still saw a dashing Rock Hudson, but inside his body a silent battle had commenced. In 1984, Hudson received a positive HIV diagnosis, a disease the world then referred to with names filled with stigma and fear. Instead of going public, Hudson chose to fight in the shadows. He made numerous discreet trips to Paris under the guise of treating routine health issues, while in reality he was seeking hope from the most advanced treatments at the Pasteur Institute. The most jarring turning point occurred in July 1985, when Hudson appeared on a television special to support his dear friend Doris Day. The world was left in shock. The once robust Rock Hudson now appeared with a gaunt face, a raspy voice, and weary eyes. Shortly thereafter, his representative in Paris issued a historic announcement. Rock Hudson was battling AIDS. It was the first time a figure of global stature acknowledged the presence of the disease, shattering the ice of silence and forcing society to confront the pandemic with newfound gravity. Hudson's final days at his Beverly Hills mansion were a heartbreaking coda. He passed away on October 2, 1985, just weeks shy of his 60th birthday. His death sent shockwaves across America. According to the New York Times, immediately following the news, AIDS hotlines were overwhelmed and donations for medical research plummeted upward. His passing, though tragic, became a humanitarian turning point, transforming a cursed disease into a medical issue that demanded understanding. Rock Hudson spent his entire life playing the role of a perfect man by others' standards, only to choose in his final moments to expose his greatest vulnerability to help those left behind. He departed in the stature of a legend, one who used his own tragedy to pull back the curtain for the truth. Yet Rock Hudson was not the only one to bear the crushing weight of fame and hidden medical secrets. While Hudson stood as the embodiment of radiant masculinity in another dark corner of the horror genre, a fellow actor was also grappling with the ghosts in his mind. and a similar illness, a man whose real life was even more haunting and complex than the legendary role of Norman Bates he once portrayed. Anthony Perkins, the dual identity behind the gaze of Norman Bates. If Rock Hudson was the incarnation of brilliant sunshine and standard masculinity, then Anthony Perkins was his antithesis, a palette of depth mystery and an ever-present fragile vulnerability. The world remembers him most for the haunting eyes of Norman Bates in Alfred Hitchcock's horror masterpiece Psycho. But few knew that the shadow of that iconic character would cast itself over his real life like an ironic twist of fate, where the line between truth and performance was forever blurred by nameless secrets. Unlike Hudson's screen lover kid persona, Anthony Perkins's career was defined by exceptional talent and a sensitive soul. He was a true artist, an Academy Award nominee who even topped the Billboard charts as a singer. However, according to biographical accounts unearthed later, particularly through the words of his partner Susan Bluestein, Perkins spent much of his life struggling with an identity that the society of his time deemed deviant. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Perkins lived in a state of extreme repression. While the public praised his boyish, somewhat shy exterior behind closed doors, he endured grueling psychological therapies in the hopes of curing his sexual orientation. Posthumous records reveal the heavy psychological toll he paid to try and fit the mold of a standard Hollywood leading man. His 1973 marriage to photographer Barry Berenson was once seen as a peaceful harbor, a place where he found solace and a happy family with 2 sons. However, the shadow of the AIDS pandemic spared no one, even those who fought hardest to change their destiny. The way Anthony Perkins confronted his illness carried a completely different tone than that of Rock Hudson. Instead of a formal announcement from abroad, Perkins discovered his health status in a much more brutal fashion. In 1990, while sitting at dinner with his family, he happened upon an article in the tabloid magazine National Enquirer reporting that he was HIV positive. A medical worker had sold his blood test results for a mere few $100s. This violent intrusion pushed Perkins into a period of silent resilience. He chose neither to confirm nor deny, instead spending his final 2 years working tirelessly and caring for his family, maintaining absolute privacy from prying lenses. On September 12, 1992, Anthony Perkins passed away at his home from complications of AIDS-related pneumonia at the age of 60. In a prepared final statement, he wrote movingly about empathy. "I have learned more about love's selflessness and human compassion in this battle than in the fiercely competitive world where I spent my entire life." His passing was a somber coda for a natural talent who had to learn to forgive himself in a world filled with rigid prejudices. Anthony Perkins' life stands as a testament to an artist's ability to give everything to their craft while being forced to keep a part of their soul in the shadows to protect those they love. His story is not just about a disease, but about the journey to find acceptance amidst the layered masks of fame. Perkins's silence marks a sorrowful chapter in entertainment history, yet it remains deeply personal to the movie star. However, during that same era, another musical legend chose an entirely different path. Rather than retreating into austere privacy, this artist transformed physical agony into the most vibrant melodies, only to take one final leap into eternity, just 24 hours after revealing the truth, leaving behind a musical legacy that changed the world forever. Freddie Mercury. 24 hours between truth and eternity. "I won't be a rock star. I will be a legend." Freddie Mercury declared it, and he achieved it. But the price to protect that legend until the very last breath was a breathless race against time that the world had never seen. 24 hours, that was the brief window between the moment Freddie officially confirmed to the world that he had AIDS and his final breath. Was it a twist of fate, or a final meticulously calculated script so that he could depart in the stance of a conqueror? Unlike the quietude of Anthony Perkins or the crumbling image of Rock Hudson, Freddie Mercury faced HIV/AIDS with a fierce and defiant pride. According to those closest to him, such as Mary Austin and Brian May, Freddie had known of his condition since 1987. Yet instead of retreating into the shadows to convalesce, he chose to hurl himself into the studio with staggering productivity. Albums like The Miracle and most notably Innuendo were born as his health was in severe decline. The creative brilliance in how Freddie faced tragedy lay in his ability to transmute physical agony into raw material for art. In the music video for These Are the Days of Our Lives, the final footage of Freddie audiences see a gaunt man beneath heavy makeup, yet his eyes still burn with an unquenchable passion. He refused all pity. Members of Queen later recounted that Freddie demanded they never mention his illness. He simply wanted to keep singing until he could no longer stand. "Write me anything, and I will sing it," he told Brian May during the recording of the immortal The Show Must Go On. The lyric, "Inside my heart is breaking, my makeup may be flaking, but my smile still stays on," was more than just a song. It was Freddie's living manifesto in his final days. The seismic event occurred on the evening of November 23, 1991. After years of silence amidst malicious media speculation, Freddie issued a brief but powerful press release admitting he was HIV positive and had AIDS. He called upon the world doctors and everyone fighting the disease to stand up together. But just one day later, on the evening of November 24th, the world stood still at the news of his passing at his London home. Freddie Mercury's departure was not a full stop, but an explosion. Medical organizations noted that his death created a tidal wave of awareness that far surpassed any propaganda campaign. The Mercury Phoenix Trust, founded shortly after, raised tens of millions of dollars for the global fight against AIDS. Freddie proved that while an individual cannot choose their illness, they can absolutely choose how they leave this world, not as a victim, but as an inspiring icon for millions of lonely souls. Freddie Mercury's legacy is a heartbreaking brilliance, a testament that art can transcend the limits of the flesh. However, not everyone possessed the glamour and power to turn death into such a formidable message. While Freddie used music to dialogue with the world, another man who brought smiles and warmth to every American household through the small screen had to choose the opposite path, hiding every ounce of pain until his last breath, solely to protect the ideal father image that millions of children believed in. Robert Reed, the secret behind the smile of America's dad. There is a tragic paradox often found in the heart of Hollywood. Those who provide the greatest sense of security and happiness to the audience are sometimes those living in the deepest insecurity. If you asked any child growing up in 1970s America for the blueprint of an ideal father, the answer would undoubtedly be Mike Brady from the classic sitcom The Brady Bunch. But behind the warmth, wisdom, and perfect parenting on-screen actor Robert Reed was straining under a different role, the role of a man forced to bury his true self to protect the American dream he represented. Robert Reed did not possess the cinematic glamour of Freddie Mercury or the rugged charm of Rock Hudson. He possessed the trust of every American household. According to production archives and the memoirs of the child actors from the Brady Bunch, Reed was a highly educated artist, a true Shakespearean stage actor who deeply yearned for profound artistic values. Yet fate tethered him inextricably to the image of Mike Brady, the patriarch of the quintessential model family. The irony lay in the fact that while Mike Brady was a symbol of honesty and openness, Robert Reed was forced to live in absolute silence regarding his true identity. At that time, had America's dad admitted to being gay, it would not have just been the end of a career, but the collapse of a cultural icon worshipped by millions. The depth of Reed's tragedy was found in how he chose to confront it through unwavering devotion and discipline. On set, he was famously meticulous, often clashing with writers to ensure the scripts maintained a sense of humanity and educational value. Close colleagues recalled that Reed cared for his TV children as if they were his own, guiding them with genuine sincerity. Perhaps in the fictional world of the studio, he finally found the family he long desired, but could never openly have in real life. By the early 90s, the tragedy manifested in its cruelest form. Robert Reed was diagnosed with colon cancer, but that was not all. In the shadow of cancer, HIV was also silently ravaging his immune system. Just as he had protected the image of Mike Brady for decades, Reed chose to keep his condition secret until his final breath. He sought no pity and refused to tarnish the memory of the viewers who saw him as their moral compass. On May 12, 1992, Robert Reed passed away at the age of 59. Initially, his cause of death was announced simply as cancer. However, subsequent medical reports and his public death certificate confirmed that the presence of H15 was a significant factor in accelerating his passing. This truth triggered a wave of profound emotion. Instead of turning their backs, the public and especially his co-stars stood up to protect him. They realized that his silence was not a deception, but a noble sacrifice to keep the wholesome values he portrayed on screen intact. Robert Reed departed, yet he left behind a legacy of kindness and absolute professionalism. He proved that behind every mask is a soul yearning for love, even if the price to be paid is solitude until the very end. Reed's story is a somber note on the repression within mainstream entertainment. But history also records individuals who chose an entirely different path, a path of brilliance, flamboyance, and defiance. While Robert Reed tried to blend into the standards, another man transformed extravagance and glamour into a crown for himself, only to use that very vanity to shroud a grim reality when the AIDS pandemic struck. Liberace, the Diamond Cape, and the Oath under the Spotlight. On November 2, 1986, at the prestigious Radio City Music Hall, the audience held its breath as a silver Rolls-Royce slowly rolled onto the stage. Stepping out was a man draped in a mink cape, weighing over 40 kilograms, encrusted with thousands of radiant crystals. He beamed a brilliant smile, his fingers glittering with massive diamond rings gliding across a gold-leafed piano. It was the final performance of Liberace, the highest-paid entertainer in the world at the time. No one in that audience could have believed that beneath the heavy stage makeup and confident swagger was a body succumbing to the devastating complications of AIDS. To understand Liberace's choice in his final hours, we must go back to the 1950s. Liberace was not just a pianist, he was a master of showmanship and a master of public relations. According to legal records in 1956, when the British newspaper Daily Mirror hinted at his sexuality, Liberace swiftly sued and even swore on the Bible in court, declaring, "I am not a homosexual and have never had a homosexual relationship." He won the case, received a massive settlement, and maintained his image as the charming bachelor in the eyes of his female admirers. The complexity of Liberace's life lay in the extreme contradiction between his flamboyant public persona and his guarded private life. While he lived in palatial mansions and drove gold-plated cars, his personal life was an impenetrable fortress. One of the most shocking details revealed later in the memoir of his young lover Scott Thorson was that Liberace had requested Scott undergo plastic surgery to look exactly like a younger Liberace. This was not merely narcissism, but a desperate attempt to cling to an illusion of youth and perfection against the ravages of time and illness. By the mid-'80s, as the AIDS epidemic claimed, many in the arts Liberace began to lose weight rapidly. However, instead of acknowledging the truth, his team crafted a narrative he was on a strict watermelon diet to stay fit. Even while bedridden in early 1987, he forbade anyone from uttering the word AIDS. The vanity that had brought him fame became the final shroud he used to protect his legacy. On February 4, 1987, Liberace passed away in Palm Springs at 67. The official cause was listed as heart failure, but a mandatory autopsy revealed the truth: he died of pneumonia caused by AIDS. This revelation sparked a global debate on celebrity privacy and the crushing pressure to maintain a clean image. Liberace spent his life turning his existence into a concerto of light and diamonds. Even as death approached, he chose to believe in the radiant illusions he had created. He departed in glamour, leaving a legacy of total devotion to entertainment, even if the price was denying his true self until his last breath. But if Liberace was the symbol of denial to protect a crown, other artists chose to face the truth in an entirely different way. Without the need for diamond capes, they used their hands and creativity to leave indelible marks on the childhood memories of millions, even as their bodies were being eroded by HIV in the shadows of the studio. Howard Ashman. The final conversation from the sickbed. Few would suspect that The Mob Song from Beauty and the Beast, a piece about a fearful, angry crowd hunting down a creature because he is different, was written by a man weighing less than 40 kilograms, his sight nearly gone. That man was Howard Ashman, the genius who resurrected the Disney empire, only to spend his final breaths composing fairy tale melodies while his body was being decimated by HIV. The irony of Ashman's career was that he gifted the world its most radiant dreams, just as his own life was fading into darkness. The documentary Howard revealed he was diagnosed in 1988, just as The Little Mermaid was set to debut. To protect the project and his colleagues' morale, he made a courageous choice. He kept his health a secret from nearly everyone at Disney. He worked with a staggering intensity, as if every lyric was an effort to leave a footprint on the earth before the tide came in. Ashman's work was never merely children's entertainment. It was steeped in profound allegories of existence. Many critics have since pointed out that Ariel's yearning in Part of Your World, the desperate desire to belong to a place where she would not be judged to walk and run free, was in fact Howard's own silent plea. He wrote of a world where outsiders like himself could find empathy instead of exile. Howard's creativity transcended music. It was found in the way he breathed soul into characters marginalized by society, transmuting his own pain into a force that stirred millions of hearts. The final months of Howard Ashman's life were a somber yet proud composition. According to composer Alan Menken, when Howard became too weak to travel, Disney was forced to set up a workspace right at his bedside. With IV drips tangled around his arms, he painstakingly refined every lyric for Aladdin. He passed away on March 14, 1991, just months before Beauty and the Beast made history as the first animated feature to receive an Oscar nomination for Best Picture. Howard Ashman departed at the age of 40, leaving behind a colossal legacy that defined the childhoods of generations. He never had the chance to witness his crowning achievement, but his name is etched in history as a master storyteller, one who used music to heal the world while carrying an incurable wound of his own. Ashman's sacrifice stands as a radiant chapter of silent devotion behind the velvet curtain. Yet the AIDS pandemic did not only claim romantic artists, it seeped into the most unforgiving athletic arenas. There, we find a figure skating legend famed for his surgical precision and absolute stoicism, who was forced to perform a life-and-death dance with a secret heavier than any gold medal he ever possessed. Andrzej Napella, the final leap into the whispers of history. In 1972, at the Sapporo Winter Olympics, the world held its breath as a young man performed with fluid glides and jumps so precise he was likened to a perfect machine. That was Andrzej Napella, the hero of Czechoslovakia, an Olympic gold medalist and three-time world champion. Yet few suspected that beneath his iron discipline and absolute stoicism on the ice, Napella was performing a dance of life and death, with secrets that the era was never ready to hear. Napella's distinction from Hollywood entertainers lay in his environment, a fiercely competitive sports world within the rigid political barriers of Eastern Europe in the 70s and 80s. In that world, physical prowess and the image of a national hero were everything. According to archives and accounts from the skating community, Napella was an intensely private individual. He did not choose glamour to express himself. Instead, he chose silence to protect his right to compete and contribute. The complexity of his story lies in a paradox: an elite athlete, the very symbol of health and vitality, facing a virus that attacked his immune system directly. After retiring and transitioning to coaching in Germany, signs of Napella's declining health began to surface. In the late 80s, when he was just 37, persistent fevers and sudden exhaustion led many in the sporting world to speculate. However, true to the spirit of an athlete who maintained discipline until the very last moment, information regarding his illness remained confined within a tight, private circle. On February 2, 1989, André Napella passed away in Mannheim, Germany, at the age of 38. The official statement at the time recorded his death as a result of lymphoma. However, amidst the height of the AIDS crisis in Europe, numerous medical reports and sources from those close to him later indicated that the cancer was a consequence of HIV/AIDS. His passing at the prime of his life left a void in the world of figure skating and opened silent but profound discussions about the privacy and pain of athletes behind the glow of their medals. André Napella departed just as he glided on the ice quietly, precisely, and without a redundant sound. He took his personal secrets to the grave, leaving the world a legacy of resilience and immortal performances. He proved that whether in sports or the arts, the battle against stigma and disease requires an extraordinary kind of courage. From Rock Hudson to André Napella, 7 individuals, 7 different fates, yet all shared a common thread. They lived and gave their all during an era when the truth about themselves could be a weapon used to destroy everything. These legends fell in the silence of the 80s and 90s, but their deaths became the first bricks laid to build a more tolerant and understanding world today. We look back at their stories not to evoke pain, but to honor the extraordinary efforts of those who chose to shine even when darkness closed in. Hollywood and the entertainment world may have once shrouded these truths, but time has proven that the true legacy of an artist lies not in the mask they wore, but in the human values they courageously left behind. If you cherish these humane glimpses into hidden history, please subscribe to the channel as we continue to tell stories that have never been fully revealed.